stolen password that was on the internet that I'm aware of.
All right, thank you.
It's fine.
He said thank you.
Oh,
wait,
Russians.
my audio's in the wrong.
Oh, here's Sally. Here's Sally.
Yeah, there she is. I'd messaged her. She said she was just
Right. So when you're ready, Sally, do you? Not Sally, Stephanie. Sorry, my brain fart. Do a countdown.
Yeah,
go
all
straight
us
in?
redheads look alike.
I know. Hang on. It's not coming through my headphones.
No, I can't get in.
There we go. My audio okay?
Yep.
Is my okay. Cool. All right. 3, 2, 1. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to WP-Tonic, this week in WordPress and tech. Jonathan, what episode is this?
Maybe we should redo it. It's 708. Do you want to do the countdown again?
Sure. I forgot to ask you that beforehand. Okay. Take 2. 3, 2, 1. Hey folks, welcome. It is another episode of WP-Tonics this week in WordPress and tech, and we are on episode number 708. Can you believe it? We are going to go through and introduce our panel today. We got 5 folks here, which is going to be great. Why don't we meet our fearless leader first, Jonathan Denwood.
Oh, thanks, Stephanie. I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. If you want to build a great membership or coaching site on WordPress, come over to us. Back over to you, Stephanie.
And Miss Sally.
My name is Sally Getch. I am the WP fangirl and fearless cat mom.
Spence.
Spence from WPLaunchify.com.
With the shortest intro ever, I
like to be brief when we're running late.
And my pal Vito Peleg is here joining us as well. Glad to have you, Vito.
Thank you. It's good to be back. I'm Vito. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Adorim, where we help agencies, freelancers to collaborate with their clients through visual collaboration.
And I am Stephanie Hudson. I'm the co-founder of Focus WP, where we augment your agency team with a full team of developers, designers, copiers, whatever you need to finish your projects but under budget and on time. So let's dive into, before we dive into our stories, let's hear just a quick message from our major sponsors. And we're back. You guys, we've got some special offers just for the tribe. If you want to check them out, head over to wp-tonic.com/recommendations. And now let's get on to our stories. This week, we are starting out with a story on WPTavern.com by Sarah Gooding. It's called Envato to Shut Down Envato Studio on Short Notice, Jilting Longtime Service Providers. Vito, what do you think about this, what they're doing here?
So there are a few things that are kind of weird to me about the way that Envato operates. And I don't get it, I don't get like what they're trying to do and how they're kind of alienating a lot of the users that or not really the users, the sellers, the people that are like built the platform. I think that this is just like one of those additional things, but also they laid off quite a few people, which it's not out of the ordinary nowadays. A lot of people are doing this, just like slim, becoming a little more lean. And I guess that maybe with losing 100 employees, something has to give. You can't just keep your operations as normal. So maybe that has to do something with it. But generally, and especially after talking to quite a few authors or plugin makers and theme makers that use Envato for years now. Over in, I had quite a few interesting discussions in WordCamp Europe about this, and no one gets what's coming and what's going on. So if someone from Envato is listening, talk to your community, and I think you can do a lot more because it is a great platform. It was a great platform. And yeah, so
one of the comments in the article was why do this? Why shut it down when you've got this robust community and all these resources and things. Why not sell that arm off if you don't want to deal with it anymore? Why not sell it? Sally, what do you think?
I saw the comment about, why not try selling it to a competitor. I had to go look up what Envato Studio was out of the 5 billion Envato things. And I think they're probably right that they should be concentrating on the stuff that's working best. But yes, for those like me who hadn't encountered it before, Envato Studio was basically the Upwork of Envato. And it is true. The people who had been using it would all have been better off if Envato had A, provided them a little more notice, and B, managed to sell them off, sell the business off to a competitor like Upwork so that people could transfer their profiles and reviews and that kind of thing. I mean, I understand that's probably a more complex process, and they may have needed to start making their cuts very fast. But it's certainly the sort of thing where, well, I don't think the people who got screwed over by this are likely to trust Envato with anything again.
Right, for sure. I also think it's really interesting, like borderline comical though, that all these web folks who we go out and tell our customers, you don't want to go on Wix because you don't own anything. You got to stick to your own website, sell on your own platform. And then here are all these web developers who are all having a little hissy fit and mad that this third-party platform, they're saying it's not fair. I mean, yeah, it sucks, but are we really going to say fair? Like that's their business decision. Like you put all your eggs in that basket, I mean, it's not an awesome situation, but it's just, I don't know. I feel like at least in this industry, we should know better. What do you reckon, Jonathan?
Well, it's a cautionary tale, and Spencer has been drumming on about this for a while, isn't he? Because he's got the experience of build. For all the drama of WordPress, as Spence says, the thing that saves it is it's open source, and this is a cautionary tale about what you've just said, Stephanie. They knew they were doing a deal with the devil, and I've got to be truthful. I use their services. We all have utilized these people's services, but what Matt said about GoDaddy being parasitic, you must be, if you want to use a strong title like that, I think it's more appropriate with these people. They've made a ton of money out of WordPress and contributed very little to it. And they've never been the greatest community player, sponsoring stuff, sponsoring WordCamps. They've never really, they've made millions and millions and millions and millions. And
I think Matt didn't want them as a sponsor on account of some
because they consistently break it. They've never been really very great players on day one, and it's a shame that they were allowed to do this land grab and make all this money. Because if you want to use the word parasitic, it really applies to these people. That's my feeling, Stephanie.
I mean, I think that this is a thing that happened. I don't know that it's that huge of a story for all of us. I don't think any of us here are big Envato users, but does anybody have any final thoughts on this, or shall we move on to the next one?
Do you not even want to ask me what I think? Or
yeah, ask Spence.
Yes, ask Spence.
There's only 5 of us here today.
We don't all say something on every stream. Spence, what would you like to add to this story?
I'm fine. I just sit here. It wasn't like there's 7 people here today.
Fine. Spencer Foreman, what are your thoughts on the Envato situation? Yeah.
The thing about Envato is a really, really well-established, very profitable business. But the guy who coded it, I'm an acquaintance with, and I think I'm saying right, the Tejas brothers, but the founders have a great sensibility of which way the wind is blowing. And in my opinion, they're getting out early and ahead because they recognize that the things that they sell are tchotchkes. Okay. And this similar thing happened with James Farmer over at WPMU, where he really at the right moment switched the model and now kind of mainstreamed it. Instead of it being like WPMU was like all of their stuff kind of bespoke inside of a container that was all whatever, he moved to a more universal model where they do have a suite of plugins, but they're plugins that fit into the thing. And this is a conversation that I've been having on a larger scale, doing some things about as well. Right now, the biggest problem with WordPress in general is too many individual vendors competing for the same attention over the same overlapping stuff. And I think this is an example of how supporting a community using a sort of legacy thing would have been kind of comparable to when Apple had dumped Flash. At the time, there was a huge following of people and, Macromedia and everything else that had started from, and now I think it was at Adobe. But the point was, they just said, no, it's over. And people whined and they whined and they whined, and then it was gone. And it's gone today and nobody misses it because other things replaced it.
And we're all fine. Yeah, everybody's fine.
But that's just the individual people who have their Envato world. If you go to Envato today, the difference between that and WordPress is that there's WordPress stuff there, but it's being sold like on eBay. It's like, buying secondhand stuff, even though it's from the author. It's not like an author who wants a brand or a business or something that's well known. They're doing it because they're just freelancing. They're hustling.
Well, I don't
Well, what's wrong with that?
First of all, that's
I didn't hold on. I did not apply a judgment of negativity to it, but it's factually correct. Is that if you look at most of the successful vendors on Envato, they don't have a presence in our typical WordPress community. Like if you look at some of the themes, like the one Avada or whatever, like Avada sold millions and millions and millions of things. Where are the Avada people in anybody's conversation about WordPress? Nowhere. And I could go down the list. The X theme was, I think, their big thing. But there's tons of authors who make thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, but they just don't want to be bothered with talking about WordPress.
Well, like I say at the beginning,
but it wasn't a judgment. That's the opposite.
No, it just seemed like, we've got to be frank. They should have listened to this podcast, and they should have listened to your warnings, Spencer. Because this is the day of judgment comes when you build your whole business on somebody else's platform, and it's not open source. That you're going to, in the end, you're going to get screwed over. It's just,
well, what does that matter? Like a lot of us are not exactly thrilled about the progress of Gutenberg or things like that. We still don't have control. You're using a third-party solution that is being driven by a small group of people, basically. Even if we're all talking about this, it's not that we can actually do something substantial to change it out of the gate. We're using a solution. But I think that there's like the Envato ecosystem is a community of its own, and I think that what they were doing, and it kind of feels like what Divi or Elegant Themes are doing. So they're not so much part of the WordPress or let's say our community. They are part of the WordPress community.
They're just not part of the cool tribe, are they?
Yeah, they're not. I guess that's true. They're not part of this fraction of the community, but they have their own. And if we're talking about Xtheme, they were doing like partnerships inside their solution with other plugin developers, installing a Rev Slider back in the day and Visual Composer and all of it was all players that were playing inside the Envato ecosystem.
Here's the metaphor. There's Alibaba or whatever, I don't know what they call it now, but the Chinese marketplace for goods that Americans can log onto the website and buy. Now, forgetting AliExpress.
Yeah.
So forgetting today's like supply chain problems, there was a time maybe a year or two ago where like I need like an electric bike or a part for my car. And you could go on AliExpress and you can actually buy retail from them. It would take 2 months till it got over on a boat. But the point was like Envato was the place you go and bought Chinese knockoffs, if you will.
Yeah, all
Whereas,
made by Rebirth slave labor.
I don't think that's
hold
true.
on,
There's
let me
some really
finish the metaphor.
good products there.
Whereas the WordPress plugin market space was all about, like, I'm not saying American grown, but like brand name, whatever. And maybe you want to use Kirkland versus whatever. But the idea is that the people in Envato, with a few exceptions, really had all of their customers inside the space. I mean, not that dissimilar, quite frankly, from AppSumo. Maybe there's a better metaphor. Like, you sell your stuff in AppSumo, you recognize you're making a trade-off there because you're not building an independent thing necessarily. Maybe the AppSumo thing falls apart. And now that still exists. I mean, people still, it's a great way to get going, because why? You don't have to build a domain and a brand, and you don't have to put your face and name on it. You don't have to talk at WordCamps. You don't have to kiss anybody's feet. You just put it in there and people find it and then they buy it. That's it.
It's a great solution for like they touched a really interesting pain point that happens in the makers space of WordPress, which is the marketing side. People just want to build, and they don't want to build a brand. They don't want to deal with all of this. They don't want to come here and talk about it. They just want to look at the code, which is cool. I get it. And if you have a place that drives traffic and you're fine with them taking a deep cut of the business, which is instead of you needing to figure out all of the marketing stuff that goes along with it, then I think that's cool. I disagree. So if you look at even the WordPress repo, there aren't many brands that you can say from the top of your mind. Out of 65,000 or 68,000 plugins, there's like 100, if you really think about it, but maybe 30 that you can drop from the top of your head. Over there, I think it's kind of the same. You have Visual Composer was born there. Revolution Slider was born there. It changed the industry in terms of sliders back in the day. It's all kind of.
And Pippin got his start on
and Avada. Everyone knows Avada. Even if you don't like it, you know it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. And a lot of those companies do have brands. They have their own websites. They have their own brands. They have their own designs. But they sell through there because it was convenient to sell through there.
Nobody knows, and this is Vito's point, I think.
But yeah, in terms of knowing them in person,
they know each other. That's the key. They don't know you and me, but they know each other, and we don't know them. They don't know us.
It's literally, it really boils down to that. And there's the 1% of the 1% in WordPress, which is changing fast anyway. If you're not hanging out in the post status Slack or channel, but like for the brand names, you can identify.
I don't want
almost in every case. I don't want to
fall asleep.
The major plugin authors have like a Colonel Sanders running the chicken store, right? Like everybody knows who's the founder. And I think that's the big thing about WordPress, is that we were all a bunch of faces before we were brands and products.
I got to tell you, Spence, rather than joining the post status Slack channel, I'd rather take one up the arse.
Wow.
What you do on your weekends, Jonathan, is up to you. But nevertheless, the point is still the same, that nobody in today's marketplace going forward has the same degree of care over who the author is of a plugin. In the old days, that was a differentiator. If you didn't want to be known and you were a talented person, go into marketplace where there's buyers who buy your stuff and you support it anonymously. If you went in the other space where we're at with WordPress, you became known as a brand or a person or a celeb of whatever you're doing in a small group. But now it's a larger audience, and now there's bigger stakes, and that's where we're hearing these stories. But that's changing because the authors that had the faces are all selling out anyway, right? I mean, even Yoast sold out, but you got Josh Strebel sold Pagely, and you've got the guy, I can't think of his name right now, who just sold out the ACF again for the third time, John. And the idea is, like, you go down the list, there won't be any celebrities or faces behind the plugins here anymore at a certain point. It'll be just features. It'll be just plugins that do stuff. And I think that's where Envato is smart. They're jumping ahead of the game, saying, we've already got that. Like, we can just, let's stop doing the stuff that's hard.
But it's not like they don't have other things going on.
They're $1 billion plus a year company, so I
Yeah.
know on factual basis that they're not worrying about money whatsoever.
Yeah, they're doing fine. Let's move on to our next story, guys. We're going to talk now about Copilot. TheNextWeb.com has an article. I don't see who wrote it. GitHub Copilot works so well because it steals open source code and strips credit. AI is a topic that is very near and dear to mine and Vito's hearts right now, because we're working with Bertha AI, doing AI copywriting. What do we think about this? The Copilot, which is basically taking the code from GitHub and then feeding it to Microsoft's AI customers. Jonathan, what do you think?
Well, it's a sorry story, but an inevitable one. As soon as I heard that they had sold to Microsoft, I knew in the end it was going to go pear-shaped. I just knew it. It's another cautionary story, very linked to story one. Where you buy in and you put all this code up, and it's not open source. It's not an open source project. And they did well, the founders, and they sold it to Microsoft. But coders have been taking other people's code forever, and not, it's the unhidden. Most people, that's how they learn, by taking other people's codes, mashing this and that together, and then having to work it out. I think the key thing that's really peeved a lot of people off, which is so typical of Microsoft, is that they want to charge. They're taking other people's work and they're building value, Stephanie, and then they want to charge you, and they never put. It's typical Microsoft American corporate behavior, taking other people's free work, charging you for other people's stuff, and not even giving you credit. It's charming. It's just, but I knew it was going to come.
Yeah, it's a mess. Spence, what do you think? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sally.
Oh, I do wonder whether there would have been such a fuss if Microsoft wasn't charging for it. I also wondered, I couldn't tell from the article, whether they had used, the public repos or also the allegedly private repos as their source material. And also what would people, would people have had a different response if their source had been, well, we went through the whole of Stack Overflow and, we looked at all the code there, and, that's what we trained our AI on. I mean, I would guess probably with Bertha and with a lot of other things, you didn't necessarily notify every single web page creator that you were using their using their website content as training material for your AI. It's a tricky thing. I don't know whether this is more or less scandalous than a lot of stuff that's done where people don't get credit or money. I think, if this is all the public repos, it's true people were not expecting compensation when they put it up there, but they put it up there usually for the purpose of, showcasing their work or teaching people something. And this is, which is different from, I wasn't making money on this, but, this other person is going to go ahead and try to make money on it. It's annoying when it's your work.
It is. And I think the difference between this and like the AI copywriting, for example, is that the copywriting learns and then writes novel words.
Writes something new.
Not novel words, but writes something new. Whereas code, by nature, you can't do that quite as much. I mean, sure, there are different paths you know, you can make different
Yeah, but
choices. in your
Stephanie,
code.
I think the thing
Doing
that's
that,
I think the thing that's really peeved people off, Stephanie, is the audacity of Microsoft to actually then
Selling,
charge,
like,
but
selling it,
sell the
yeah.
bloody thing. It's so
For sure.
typical of these pirates. You know, you can't trust Microsoft as far as you could throw it. You know, they're from the 90s. They've had a history of, you know, it's just an awful history. And people said, oh, they've changed their ways under the new CEO, blah, blah, blah. If they want to believe that, cobblers, that's up to them, Stephanie. It's in their DNA. They couldn't change their ways if their life depended on it. It's just as simple
What do you
as
think,
that.
B?
Well, I generally disagree with Jonathan on his approach to
Everything?
mostly on everything, but I think that would make the show interesting. But like when it comes to Microsoft, you
Yeah,
know,
but the reason you do veto is you want to become one of them. You want to make tons of money, and so you admire these pirates, don't you,
Yeah.
Vito?
I don't
All
think of them
right.
as pirates. I think of them as creating value, then monetizing the value, and going around and trying to figure out which piece of code is the one that would work for you, is a way to go about it, and then it's free. Or if you want something to do it for you at a fraction of the time, then you pay $10. I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
The
No,
code
it ain't. It's not at all. You're totally wrong.
So the way I look at this is, startups use libraries, and we're coming from the WordPress space. We're building websites for our clients with a bunch of different plugins. A lot of times, always also white labeling the solutions in some way or another. Stephanie just shared the link in our internal chat of a plugin that popped out on the WordPress repo that completely removes all of the branding from Bertha, for example. Which is fine. I think that's cool. That's part of the game that we're playing here. I think it's a kind of a badge of honor that someone does this to a product that you create, or if your piece of code is being incorporated in that way or another. If you want to keep your code to yourself, keep your code to yourself. If you want it to be used, then share it with the world. Most startups around the world, I would even say maybe 98%, are leveraging libraries and components through these repos to accelerate the builds.
Yeah, but Vito, they don't take other people's work, which
Why
is
not?
fair enough, and
Why
then
not?
then they charge for it.
Of course they charge for
like-
it. So if you go into AppSumo, all of the tools on there are using at least one component or another. If we need to implement, even in Adorim, let's say we need to implement, now we're adding like a Google sign-in type of thing. What are we gonna learn how to create this from scratch? You can take a library and put it in there, and you got it.
Yeah.
So now we don't need to charge for our solution because we use the Google sign-in.
No, I'm not. You're not answering. You're not answering the
It's
fundamental
the value
question,
that is
Vito.
created from the use case, not from the actual code. They're not monetizing the code itself. They're monetizing the use case of saving you time.
Oh,
I wanna hear what
sorry,
Spence has to say on
I'm
this.
not following that, Vito. That's come
Agree to
off it.
disagree.
Right.
I want to hear what Spence says.
This whole the whole premise of the complaint here would be kicked out of court in a second, because open source.
Yeah.
Okay. The code was not copyrighted, not trademarked. It wasn't locked in a vault. It was posted open source. And to Sally's question, I read here, it says all system called Copilot, blah, 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 that was published under an open source license. So it really makes no difference whether it was displayed publicly or privately. If it had the open source license, that's what the code is. What I find surprising is that it's 2022 and the whichever license, GNU or whatever it was, I'm surprised that people still don't actually read what's on the cereal box when they publish stuff under an open source license. It says anybody can use it for any reason they want.
And modify and play with it and do whatever they want with it.
Well, just like you thought somehow that nobody was ever going to figure it out, that it was there. Because like you can go and browse it, and maybe they're complaining that it's like, who the F cares? You made a
Nice
deal when you put an
censoring.
open source license on it. Stop
The
bitching about it.
licenses are a bit different. Some of them do include, attribution, blah, blah, and it has to be released under the same terms.
Doesn't to me make any bit of difference, because it's not a photograph. It's not like the guy, shooting Lee Harvey Oswald and stuff like that. The code is behind the scenes. Somebody could take the code, like Vito said, like I just launched a new plugin into the repository, another one. But the point is, like, I had to sit there and I have to go through all my functions, and I have to put my own domain, text domain on, and I got to change the function names or whatever. By the time I do all that, is it really that person's thing? No, it's completely different. Like if you took a photograph of Campbell's soup cans and painted it different colors and put 6 of them, guess what? You're Andy Warhol and you become a world famous artist. But the woman who designed the original Campbell soup can be complaining like, "Well, hey man, my can is in there. You owe me money." That's not how it works.
No, so I totally accept what you've said there, but that isn't the real point. The point is, that they should have known better. But Microsoft, when they took over this company, we're going to be a good player. We're changing our ways. They did a PR job quite extensively.
What are they
What do you want?
What product are they breaking?
They did, however, also make a bunch of their own code open source.
They're not stripping credit. They're not selling it to others via algorithms. That's patently false. What they're doing is taking data that was publicly, everyone would have to say, given to the platform, and they're just displaying it and using it in different ways, which they always had a right to do because they own the platform, but they're also users of that open source code. They're just repurposing it. And again, the argument is this. I think we're living in a world right now in America in particular, and where I live in particular, because I live in Highland Park. The point is, like, we're in a world right now where half of the country, half of the world is acting like babies in diapers, that no rules apply to them anymore. But the way civilization has always moved forward is by a tacit agreement amongst people, business people and personal people. You're going to slow down and stop at a stop sign. You're going to let the kids cross the street. You're going to not do things to other people. Follow the golden rule. And here in business, the deal was up front. It's open source. Done. There's no more whining about, it was not true or lie or you're doing this, your motives. That's not the same thing. If they had stolen a movie or a patented thing or a trademark thing, then I would agree. But there's no argument that open source software, you have the right to whine about not being attributed because...
Are you trying to say I'm a whiner?
But can you imagine, like, I have to sit there and do on the back end coding. And it's so annoying just to do the basics of making sure that you sanitize this and escape that and comment this. If I had to put like a link to every effing person that ever contributed a snippet of a function, the entire thing would be the Encyclopedia Britannica.
It's going to look like the WordPress admin panel.
It's like, Vito knows because he maybe gets his hand in the code there, but like anybody who's coded would look at this and be like, you're out of your freaking mind. It's like the Envato conversation of people complaining that you're closing my little playground. No, we never promised you that you would never.
I would even say like a more relatable example is why are you charging people for websites? It's open source. You're taking someone else's code.
Oh, come off it. That's a ridiculous example, Vito.
We're taking open source and we're creating value from it for other people.
They're not providing it. They're not providing any value. They're just nicking other people's stuff and charging.
Hold on.
My understanding is that they are providing a lot of value.
Meals
that
in a
people
box.
do really like it.
If you're a single person and you go to the grocery store and you want to make a fresh meal, guess what? You can't buy one chicken breast, little slice of celery, a little bit. You can't buy little micro stuff. You have to buy enough for a full family. And you only wanted one meal. But you know who solves the problem? Those meal in a box companies. They send you the raw ingredients for a certain meal for 1 or 2 people. And it's
charge you more than if you bought the big ones in the grocery store.
What they're doing is they're curating the stuff
Yeah.
into a solution. And that's what's
not
happening
fair.
with open
That's
source.
not fair, Spence. You know,
That's not fair. That's not fair.
but
I
I agree
think,
with you. Like what we're doing when we're building a website is we're doing a meal prep service. You know, we're taking all of the ingredients and we're putting it together to create a different sort of value that is arising from all of the components coming together. You know, that's really what web building is nowadays.
It's
more.
curation.
It's like, yeah, it's integration. It's puzzles. You know.
Anyway, it's
I like
the whole
what Vito said. I really like is that sort of made this click for me is that they're not selling the code, they're selling the service to get the code and find what you need. It's more of like a search engine, basically.
And that's the
You
thing,
guys have
Stephanie.
used
It's
outrageous.
outrageous.
Built with.
Yeah.
The service, Gary, this guy in Australia, built this built with service. It is a scraper that scrapes public-facing web pages, and it acquires all of the data about the tools that are in it. So if you want to learn, where's all the websites using WooCommerce and a certain plugin? Guess what? You pay Gary and his one other helper like $500 or $1,000, some huge amount, which is totally worth it for competitive knowledge about stuff that's existing in plain view for anybody who wants to bother finding it. But he's done the service of aggregating it. And he's got a multi-million, I think it's into the 8 figures now, business with like one computer and one helper. And the point is, he's taken what's there legally for him to see and delivered it in a different format. And that's what we're talking about. Open source.
I have another kind of example from, you know, how you go into those into these dashboards and you see blocks of different websites that have a screenshot of the website, right? That shows you how the top hero section looks like. That's an API that is most of it is done through a tool called the URL box, which is a paid API that you're paying for them to go and take a screenshot of the top section of a website that exists on the web through a URL. So and then you're displaying it inside your own product, and you're paying them for the service of fetching that screenshot instead of you going to a gazillion websites and taking screenshots like a maniac, you know. Right. So the service is what is adding the value here, and we're a user and we're happy to pay these guys because they save us the time of developing this API, as well as saving us the time of going out and manually taking screenshot of every website that is being added. So I don't see it any different than this. They're taking information that is readily available on the web, and they're just fetching it for you, you know.
As I love listening to y'all fight, but we are gonna have to hear from our sponsors again before Jonathan yells at me. Let's have we'll just take a quick break. Let everybody just maybe take a breath, just have a breather, and we'll be back in a moment. Okay, we're back, everybody. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter, the WP-Tonic newsletter, if you want to hear all of Jonathan's deep, dark thoughts on WordPress news. Sign up at wp-tonic.com/newsletter. Now, on to story number 3, masterwp.com. This article is titled Toxic Scorekeeping: The Case Against Five for the Future by Rob Howard. We are moving back into this discussion about Five for the Future, which was, of course, stirred up over the past couple of weeks with our fearless leader criticizing GoDaddy. And then this guy actually runs some numbers in this article. Who would like to kick off this story for us? Who here has something specific they'd like to say? Anybody?
I will. I mean, okay. I talked to Rob about this. I think what's interesting, what's happening with, I published there too, obviously, but Master WP, Rob and Brian and Naisha and everybody else, is that this is the Emperor's New Clothes website. Okay. Everybody there is speaking truth because we've discussed.
I think this podcast does a pretty good job.
This podcast does it under the guise of infotainment. Over there, it's got a slightly sharper edge because it's like holding a mirror up without the, we're all a bunch of.
I think Vito's going to come over and cut my balls off.
The bottom line is this is
just. You're lucky you're on different continents.
I can tell he's a bit pissed.
He's
It's
fine.
just another example
right.
of how there's a deficit in the WordPress leadership about making people account for something that is not clearly defined and doesn't align with the reality of what other people are really contributing. So in other words, it's an arbitrary thing that makes no sense to a rational-minded person, and Rob is one of them, where you say, is it better to be loved or feared, right? Like the Machiavellian story of the prince. So is it better for Matt to be loved because, hey, peace and love and do what you want, whatever, or feared because he's made it clear, if you're not doing the right amount of stuff and the right amount of way, the way we say, even though we're not saying it, something bad is going to happen. And that'd be a shame, because
That's right.
that's what
Hate
he's
to
essentially.
see something happen to your business.
I had to go into Tony Soprano mode. But the point is,
I'd like to hear Tony Soprano more
it'd
often.
be a shame if you spent a ton of money and you didn't get any credit and we cut you off, because basically we don't like what you're doing. We're not going to tell you what to do, and we're not going to publish any details, but something bad could happen. That's all we're saying. Be careful when you start your car. And that's what's going on.
If it's mandatory, is it really volunteering?
He's holding a mirror up, Rob's analysis about the relative amount of money spent and time spent. Okay? If a company has to spend money in an envelope, by the way, hey, here's your thing, Matt. We brought you your thing. Thank you. Okay? If they bring the money in an envelope to Five for the Future, will they actually get credit? Does it really mean they're safe? And if not, what about all the other things they do? Like, how about publishing a newsletter or a blog post that gets read by everybody in WordPress and says this? So in other words, the hypocrisy is real, and there's a tangible metaphor in historical literature or modern TV that when you lead from the top down without being crystal clear about what's going to happen, you either create fear or love, and typically it's fear. And right now we have a leader that's creating fear and anxiety, not just among the individuals, because clearly that's the case, but among corporate endeavors, because they don't know what to spend money on. And we're already going through this in American politics. We don't need it in the place we have our livelihood. So his suggestion is, let's dump the whole bullshit and start like putting dollars where they really count for something and are accounted for objectively.
Vito, what's your thoughts?
That's all I got to say about that.
I think that the Five for the Future concept is a nice rule of thumb, and I agree with Spence that there are many ways to contribute to the community. It doesn't have to be like solid hours of contribution to the source code in some form or another. That could be done. I think that this is contributing to the community. What we're doing right here, that's also part of the activities that drive WordPress, that drive adaptations, that drive people to know what to look for and how to look for it. You know, we're kind of sharing our knowledge, which is our resource, and so I don't think that it should be nickel and dime to the man hours that is distributed into that. And I agree with Spence that it's like, so the whole point is just that it's a rule of thumb. It gives you a frame that you can aspire to, and it's a nice kind of gesture to do. But almost no one does this. You know, if you're talking about, we're talking about GoDaddy because they're a big company, but every one of us is making livelihood from WordPress. Do we do it? Do we count what is 5% of our time, and we're bringing this into the source code? Does every developer, every agency out there, every freelancer is actually contributing 5% of their time? So it's very easy to, and probably more close to 0.0001 is the answer for most people. And so I think we're just kind of like picking on those that are easy to pick on, like Jonathan likes to do with Microsoft, and it's easy.
I just like picking on you. I just like picking on you because I'm bare.
Yes, and of course the rest of us like picking on Jonathan, so it works out.
So it's kind of like it's I don't think that's fair at all, and I even tweeted about this when this first came out, all this mess that there's people that are contributing in all kinds of different ways. The fact that if we're talking specifically on GoDaddy, I think it was something like $250,000 that they gave to the after party of WordCamp or something crazy like this. Doesn't that count?
Right. That's what I was going to say. Is it only hours that we're talking about here? Because they're talking about some of these other folks who give maybe a higher percentage of hours into actual core code, but then they're not.
Yeah. I feel
they're
that
not
when I
sponsoring
sponsor
it.
WordCamp, I contribute to the community. That's how I feel.
What about when we're doing stuff like this? This is contributing to the community.
Yeah.
Well, right, organizing a meetup is contributing, and you do at least get a little badge for that. But
Give me a gold sticker, a gold star.
yeah, you would get a little badge on your WordPress.org profile. And they consider like speaking a contribution because you get a little badge for that too. But
which is also how you reward children and get them to
yes,
ABCs. Give them a
although
sticker.
gamification
That's driven me my whole life, getting the
Which,
badges.
by the way, nobody
is
knows where your WordPress profile is. because-
Right.
right. Yes, I mean, it's nice to get credit for it, but it's hard to it's hard to quantify some of it, and it's hard to it's very easy to point to, I contributed this patch to the code and see that. But yeah, those of us who are sole proprietors or very small companies, it's not like we could pay for somebody to work full time on contributing to WordPress, and companies like GoDaddy can, and they do. And whining that they're not doing it enough is not going to encourage them to do it more. There has to be a limit to the amount of pure volunteer work anybody does if they want to keep eating.
Well, again, is it
this-
volunteering if you're made to do it? What
Right.
about
this whole
tithing? Is this like tithing for
Yeah.
work though? Like what's the word for giving 5%? I've tried to Google it. I can't figure it out. If tithe
No.
means 10%, what's
I don't
5%?
know. I think
Tithing?
yeah, it's good. I think the whole thing is bonkers. I mean, absolute bonkers. This whole, and it's some ways linked to story one in a way, Stephanie, because instead of the great leader, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to come across as having a go at him. We all owe him
never.
well, we do. We owe him a great, him and the joint founder. He's built something really amazing. I really admire him. But he is a bit eccentric, like most really clever people. They can be a bit eccentric. I don't even like GoDaddy, but to call them parasitic, oh, come off it. What was going through your mind? But this whole concept, it's bonkers because trying to show people up because they don't contribute the way that you want them to contribute, and it's such bad PR, and it leaves such a bad, unnecessary, bad feeling in people. And what they should have done something like these real parasites that we discussed in story one. They should have run that. The money should have been. The profit made from it could have been given to WordCamps, scholarships, contribute the gravy. When Matt, who's got, and I don't hold it against him. I'm sure Vito likes to think I'm some socialist bonkers. I'm not actually Vito, but I also want to share some of the gravy. To take some guy that's got probably hundreds of millions of dollars in his bank account And for him to say that people should work on a project for free, and he last time he went on a jolly to the Antarctic and had a month with the penguins. It's all kind of bonkers, Stephanie. It really
So
is
I think what
bonkers.
you're saying is that it's bonkers. Yeah.
But,
So it's bonkers. We got
yeah,
it. So let's.
it's all
I hate to
bonkers.
say it, but we've got to move on to the next story. We're running out of time here. We're heading over to arstechnica.com now. The title of this article is Google allowed sanctioned Russian ad company to harvest user data for months. Spence, I know you got something to say on this.
I mean, it seems beyond belief that anybody would assume that anything they say or do on Google or Facebook is not already being harvested. I mean, quite literally, it's gotten to the point of, like, again, as we've talked about, if I say a certain word of a product I've never used, just say it here in my house, let alone type it. I'm inundated. In fact, I have an 18-year-old who's very good with his sense of fashion and dress. And I said, help your old man out here. I need to get some shoes. Like, what are the right kind of shoes that everybody's wearing? You know, I need a little advice. And we just like talked about it in the house. I swear to God, every device I own is littered with shoe ads now. It's just, you're living in some alternative universe if this is a surprise. That's all I can say.
I can't tell you, Stephanie, what adverts I get.
Please don't.
Yeah, that might be a little too X-rated for this show.
Yeah, I don't want to. We don't want that sneak peek into the Jonathan Denwood world.
So, which by the way makes the whole that German court thing about the $100 fine if you are using Google fonts makes that even more ridiculous, because like this stuff goes on all the time, but like making a website or somebody pay $100 fine for Google fonts when Google is harvesting every single thing about every visitor to your site anyway seems kind of absurd.
And they just need the money, don't they, Spencer? They just, just sell it to this Russians, just give it. I'm starting to learn Russian.
Well, this is kind of like the bit about TikTok last time. It's like, is anyone really surprised that this is happening? Like, breaking news, the Chinese government is looking at data from TikTok. And it's like, did you ever think they weren't?
But even,
I like
by the way, sorry to interrupt you, but
U.S. senators sent a letter to Google.
If you go back to built with example, apply it to this. Like if you have a name of somebody or a phone number or even a scrap of data, just type it in and you immediately will learn every single personal thing about that person anyway, right? It's there for the taking, but somebody is just delivering it in ready to consume format. But it, like, even search yourself, you'll see. It's like really weird how much stuff is there for the taking. It's silly to think you can hide unless you go to the desert in a trailer like, Walter White or something.
I've just recently started rewatching that. Yeah,
but go to the desert in a trailer, no one there but you and the camera crew.
Yeah. These U.S. senators sent a strongly worded letter to Google, and they
I bet they were terrified.
I'm sure they're so. I bet they use it for toilet paper in the executive toilets of Google.
I doubt that they're printing a lot of emails at Google, but I get your point.
I think that these companies are being given too much credit that they're doing these things intentionally or on purpose, or they actually noticed. It's probably just kind of something that happened because someone just didn't update the database properly to remove these guys. And it's such a huge scale. These things are going to happen all the time. What can you do?
It's a really good point, actually. I agree with Vito. They don't even know. It's actually an all scale. I doubt it is. The money they're making from this is just peanuts. The money's just pouring in anyway. It's like a stream of dollar notes. It's just like a wall of money that just goes into Google. It's just a printing machine for money, isn't it?
I just posted a link in here that gives you another, like if you ever watch the movie Minority Report. So it's not just Google or the website. Like license plate readers that are run by private companies exist all over. Chicago has quite a few of them. Now, with these whacked out states offering bounties for people doing things from other public, they're suggesting, and it's just a logical conclusion, that now these companies will sell the data to whomever who's enforcing this, and that now there's a direct way to know that Susie left the state to get
And
an
God
abortion.
forbid you use a period tracking app, because that data is not covered under
I'm just
HIPAA.
saying, like, there's stuff happened around here this weekend, and there's cameras all over every town. And so your web browsing is one thing, your cell phone is another, people you know is another. You're on every street in every town, you're being watched, and it's just a matter of who's going to profit from the data. Like, it's just a fallacy to think, unless you literally are out in the desert, and even then there's a satellite, you have to have some kind of thing over your head. We're not
There is
living
no
in a world
off
where you're
grid
free from
anymore. There's
surveillance.
no off grid. Yeah. Guys, can we move on to our next story? Everybody good? We're gonna go. We are coming up to the top of our hour, and I want to do our recommendations as well. So let's jump back over to masterwp.com and talk briefly here about some lessons for WordPress from 1975. Brian Cords I don't know, wrote this article referencing the mythical Man Month, which was a book written by an early computer genius. But what do you guys does anybody, Sally, what did you think about this article?
You know, the big takeaway from the mythical Man Month is, 9 women can't have a baby in a month. There's a there's a limit to efficiency, and the quote that they have here.
Unless you're Elon Musk, you can't have 9 babies in a month.
But it's the mother where this is an issue. I imagine Elon could father 9 babies that would be born within a month. Adding manpower to a late software project makes it later. I remember seeing a Dilbert cartoon illustrating this, and that this is part of the issue with something like contributing to WordPress. It's not easy to onboard people. It's not easy to coordinate them. It's only going to become more chaotic and more delayed by simply adding people to it. And there was
It's all nonsense anyway, Sally. It's some idea that some...
Let her finish, Jonathan.
No, I'm agreeing with her, but in a way, it's just nonsense, isn't it? Because they're not going to let people that they don't really know contribute to the core of this. Come off it. In the way, it's a little circle of trusted people. And the idea that it's all cobblers anyway, but, it is what it is, isn't it?
Very profound, Jonathan. Spence, I know you have some feelings. I know you have feelings about how this is all being run.
I mean, it's an extension of what I had talked about earlier, which was too many cooks spoiling the pot, right? Like WordPress, instead of being a coherent top-down product or platform where everybody makes features that fit into it, has become essentially like a carnival with everybody at their own tent yelling at the customers passing by, I've got everything you need in here, and without regard to whether that overlaps or interferes or blocks. And what Brian's point is
hold on, I was going to tell you this real quick. I went to Mexico a long time ago, and they would say, hey, lady, come and see my junk.
Right. Or at the airport, when you come into Mexico, the airport, that they have a taxi or a ride.
Hey, lady, come and see my junk. I'm like, I don't.
I use that every day, Stephanie.
Yeah, I bet you do.
And so what happens is that now you've got this kind of hard to put the genie back in the bottle problem, which is you have an open source project that has no coherent top-down like direction. It's kind of loosey-goosey, but now there's 8 million cooks in the kitchen, and throwing more cooks at it isn't going to solve the problem. It's going to make it harder, because now anybody who was talking about WordCamp Europe and said, there's our 2 hours contribution time. Like, I guarantee you, if you sat one coder down for 2 hours, they would have done more than everybody in that 2 hours, because everybody was just so like, what are we going to do? And it was like 5 minutes of coding versus...
It takes 2 hours to get a contributor day set up, I've done it.
Right. And so like even just comparing, I won't use myself, I'll use Jack Arturo.
And then you go to lunch.
Like, yeah, like Jack singularly coded WP Fusion, drip by drip, line by line. But like he cranks out updates singularly because there's nobody else to talk to. It's partially in his brain, it's on the screen. That's way more efficient than getting a bunch of people to agree where we're going to go to lunch today. If you ever watched like 30 Rock and they have 30 people like throwing spitballs at each other or where we're going to eat today, and then nobody eats. So that's the problem.
Oh, got it. It was bad enough on family vacations.
Yeah, WordPress has lost the thread of it being a couple cool kids doing it, and now it's just this gigantic stadium full of people, you know, getting stuff done, but like not with any coherent, like this is what we're gonna do.
The concept that like everyone can have a part of this thing, that everyone can be a part of it, is very romantic and lovely, but you can't just come, like if you had a crew going to build a house and everybody's carrying one brick and they just put it wherever they want, like that's not going to make a very attractive or sound building.
Yeah, it's a bit linked to Spencer's spot. In a way, I do agree with Spencer. It's linked to the man. He's got this romantic, so you know, he's a complex dude, isn't he? Because he's a real mercenary. You know, he's made a ton of money, but he's also got this romantic side of him that he wants it like we have all these cool developers, and those days are over. It's become you know, he kind of swings, and you see this kind of strain in him, or I can see it, where he wants to go back to the romantic days, and then but then there's the mercenary side, which there must be because he's a very effective business person. So it's a strange concoction, Stephanie.
It is. Vito, have you had something to say on this yet?
Oh, he's muted.
Not anything that we haven't kind of discussed before. I do think that a restructure is something that must happen in order for us to secure the future of this project. Yeah. I also agree that the contributor days, while again it's a cool concept, it's not the way to get stuff done. You know, I've been part of quite a few of them, and you just, even after you finish, you feel like you haven't done much, you know, compared to just me sitting here and doing work for.
Well, I mean, the first time we had a contributor day, it took one person like pretty much the entire time just to get onto the WordPress Slack.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, you got to allow a lot of time for that, and you've got to find things people can do in a short time, which is mostly stuff like answer questions in the forum, maybe write captions for a video, you know, small concrete things where you can say, I did a thing, and do it in that time. But working on the actual code is not, you know, that's.
But even like,
not
you know,
very
replying
effective.
to 3 support tickets, am I gonna feel that yes, I did my part because I answered 3 questions, like answering to 3 Facebook posts? You know, how many comments do we look at the comment feed here? Look at Greg. He's been with us from the beginning. You know, this is efficiency. You know, like you can't do that over there. Even we kind of were. I was put at some point at one of them at translating plugins because I speak Hebrew. And you know, you go through a plugin. Amazing. There's only 64,999 left. You know.
There's no wait. What? I didn't even catch
it. Free plugins in the repository.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
whatever you do, there's so much more to be done. But that's
cool.
That's what life is.
That's fine.
There's
that's
always
fine.
a ton more to be done than you've actually done.
You finish a task that seems kind of too small for the for what it's all kind of for the whole structure of it, for being onboarded for 2 hours and coming out and sitting in a place and having sponsors that are coming in to support the entire thing and finding the places where everyone is going to sit and dividing into teams and having keynote sessions at the beginning and at the end, and all of those kind of things.
It's just not
right, like
it's so
20
ridiculous.
lines.
It's so ridiculous, isn't it, Vito? It should be just a celebration of WordPress, a party. It should, just have the vendors, have some good speakers, and have a good party. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with all of that time and energy being put into it to organize it. The real crime is that it's just dropped. Like, once you invest the time in getting people onboarded, then utilize them. But it's not.
I think it should be dropped anyway, because it's ridiculous in the scope of how big WordPress's problems are. That if you were to say, hey, there's an event, I got to make brownies. Let's have 200,000 people like sign up to come to my house to make brownies, and maybe 50 or 100 show up. It still is ridiculous. It'd be faster just to make the brownies.
But you need to teach 90% of them what is chocolate,
Yeah.
Everything you have to do is like, should it be sweeter? No, I'm a diabetic. Should it be this? No, I am allergic to nuts. Oh, should it be this? No, it's too much frosting on top. By the time everybody look at anybody who cares, because it's so geeky, but when you look at the SVN or the GitHub or the notes of like, everybody's debating everything. Like, literally, should it be a comma here or a colon? Oh, nothing gets done. And that's
that really showed up when he was taking the live questions at WordCamp Europe. Oh my God.
Private companies don't do that. Like, a private company that is top down, they make choices. The product managers have product teams, and then there's the executives and the marketing people, and they all come to some top down military style agreement. We're going there, and you guys do this, and you guys do that, and you girls do this, and you girls, and everybody just gets it done for that purpose. Whereas WordPress, it's an organic, like, let's talk about what color red is and all that sort of thing. And it never goes anywhere.
This, guys, do you think that the point of it is not to actually have more code generated for core, but is to make people feel like they're a part of something,
like a publicity stunt, like a PR thing?
Is it a stunt, or is it actually
building
valuable?
exercise?
It's a legacy.
Is it actually, I mean, if people then get to be a part of something, and that builds loyalty, and then people are going to be more interested, and there's going to be some of those folks who are there who end up saying, like, I really can give something of value after
it's
seeing
it, where it started. Because back in the day, there were so few people contribute. I remember I can name most of the ones that contributed, right? I mean, like, literally first name basis, and they've all moved on mostly, but that's because there was like 12, 15, 20 people contributing, and then it grew and grew and grew. And now the problem is it's a stadium full of potential contributors. And you know what, and by the way, this ties into the whole Five for the Future nonsense. You know who wants to contribute more than anybody? The people offshore that aren't well known by face or name, and they go, look, my name showed up on the core contribution. I've actually finally made it. That's why people contribute. But the fallacy is that, like, to get to the point of contribution requires so much aggravation that if there was a top-down structure that really put people into real teams and like paid them, it would get way more done faster. That would make a better sales economy for everybody, and there would be jobs, and like we could turn this.
And this is why Gutenberg has taken, it's almost getting there, but this is why it's taken forever, because of all this nonsense.
But not WordPress.
Because of this nonsense.
I don't know if this is but I have a kind of an idea. I don't know, Spence, you probably know if it's allowed or not. But even paying someone $5-10 for the time that they're gonna be doing this, that's gonna generate, and not doing it in a stadium, doing it online through a repo that you can pull in something, and you work on this, and you're assigned to this feature, you're assigned to that feature, get it done, push it out, we'll review the code, that's gonna be that's gonna accelerate WordPress by years if it's just gonna be done in that kind of a sense. I don't know if it's allowed to pay someone $5 an hour, because then it's already like then it becomes a debate of wait, is he being hired? Is he a contractor? Do they have a contract? Do they have
take your idea,
minimum wage?
Take your idea, Vito. I mean, literally, forget for a moment forget for a moment the money comes from any side of automatics, investors, anybody, and you just say, somebody is going to take the situation that exists and we're going to make the products and the things in core into feature groups that have an assigned product manager, and that the private companies, instead of buying a WordPress banner or donating to a WordCamp, donate to the feature, and then the product manager can dole out the money to people to actually do stuff and get paid for doing it. 100%, we'd move thousands of miles into the future.
Thousands of miles. It kind of reminds you of 99 Designs. You know, even if you get paid for your for providing the best quality code, so you can kind of like source out, we need to build a new color picker, whatever, you know, and then you get like 15, 20, 30 commits, and then the one that got it got the bounty, you know.
Because there's a direct correlation in a private company. There's a direct correlation between success and failure for the money spent on whether the customers pay for it or the customers stay or the more customers come on board. WordPress has no such alignment in the core or the development. It's just literally like people contributing for the good of humanity with no reason or why it's actually going to make something better or sell more. If those things could get aligned and we could be honest about the financial incentive, then I think things would move fast. And it means that like everybody who puts money in at the top actually could make more money at the bottom, because now the system is more like a product with features instead of, you know, but that's not what we have right now. And that's where all these issues come up, because like we're kidding ourselves when I have several clients who do it. I have clients that spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to sponsor WordCamps.
Yeah.
Why? Why? It's so dumb. It's because the only reason is because hopefully they'll please the king, or hopefully somebody will know their name, or hopefully they'll meet somebody. But you know, it would be cooler if there was a direct way to pay money in to pay for people to develop shit that makes our plugin or our service work. Hello.
Yeah. This bounty is sponsored by GoDaddy. You know, go build this feature. Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. I mean, and then everybody benefits, because just like our open source thing, guess what? They paid for it, but now it's there for the rest of us to use.
Yes.
Ta-da. It's so logical, isn't it? Like we've solved all of the problems.
We solved it. That's it.
There we are. We've solved all
They don't
the
call you
problems in
guys.
the world.
Let's move on to Drupal.
Fix that.
Next week's Joomla. Let's fix their problems.
Oh,
God,
you guys, it is now time for the fun part, which is when we all get to share a cool tool, resource, something entertaining with the tribe. Jonathan, do you want to start off with your recommendation?
Yeah, great hosting provider called Nestle had their CEO on the interview show. If you're looking for a great WordPress hosting that uses Amazon Web Services, I'm going to be utilizing his hosting and his company services. Go over and have a look at what they've got to offer.
What's it called?
Nestify. I'm struggling.
Nestify.
Nestify.
Nestify. Okay.
Nestify.
Cool.
I apologize. I always struggle, don't I, Stephanie?
I know. It's all right. Vito, what's your rec?
So I'm going to give us a shout out, Steph, with Bertha.ai. We started a partnership with Yoast last week as the recommended tool for generating SEO-driven and optimized content for WordPress websites. I think that this is a statement for the industry. The fact that the largest SEO plugin has endorsed AI and is actually recommending this to their millions of users, it means a lot. I don't know if people can see the magnitude of what it can do for the WordPress project or for the future of the web. The fact that this size of company has gone into recommending this as something that is valid and actually does the trick. But I'm extremely excited about this. And if you want to join the party, get 10,000 words for free. Go to bertha.ai/Yoast.
Yeah, this is a pretty big deal, and I'm gonna skip the line and go next because mine is AI related as well, because I got AI on the brain lately. Mine is a YouTube video where two AIs talk about the nature of love, with all this craziness about AI becoming sentient and everything. this is a year-old video, but they used a GPT-3 language generator to generate a conversation, and then they used this unbelievable software called Synthesia to make actual, like, they look so lifelike. I mean, not 100%, but like it's incredible what these two people look like. And then they just had them record this conversation about, like, do you think you could love me? And it's a really, like, just fascinating and fun to watch. And the best comment on the whole thing is somebody comments on there, like, even AI's out here getting friend zoned, which I thought
maybe I can replace the whole panel with AI heads.
Hey, you can try. You can try, JD. So anyway, it's a fun and interesting watch using some cool technology. Sally, what do you got?
This is a bit of entertaining for the old guard geeks. It's a YouTube video about the Flopotron playing music. According to my husband, who must have had too much time on his hands when he was young in the 80s, they figured out how to use, machine language to make the floppy disk drive play tunes in its read-write noises. And
really
what they didn't know was that this knocks your drive heads out of alignment, and then your floppy drive can't be used for floppies. And in the 80s, floppy drives were expensive. But there is a guy out there who has collected the floppy drives, the scanners, the hard drives, and basically created a symphony out of them. And it's quite remarkable to watch. And he's got a whole series on how he built this stuff, if you want to go down a rabbit hole.
I mean, everybody needs a hobby, right?
Right. Yeah. Speaking of people with too much time on their hands. But it's pretty hilarious. So worth watching for a few minutes of entertainment.
Spence, what do you got?
Sally, I hope your nickname for your husband is not the Flopotron. Okay. So
I'm so mad I didn't think of that.
I came across a plugin for our new launch kit delivery mechanism that is really exceptional. It's called Prime Mover, but probably because the people at the repository warned them that Amazon was going to call them. The word is migrate WordPress website and backups Prime Mover, but it's called Prime Mover. And what it does, it's different than all the other backup stuff, is that in the free version, single site, you can go to any website and you literally only have to press a button and it makes a tar file, but they call it Prime. That file can then exist to upload with one button click to any other site. Now, I know this sounds great, but I tried all the other free migration tools, and every single one of the other free migration tools required all these steps and all the PHP settings and the database settings. There's nothing like this. So we're using it for delivery of these free launch kit sites. And it's really great because, like, all anybody needs to do is just go to your new website, put in the free plugin, put in the, the upload of your file that you've given them of whatever they're going to migrate, and that's it. So really easy. And it's good, I'm sure, for backing up your site too, but I'm using it for moving sites. So worth checking out.
That sounds cool. If you guys want to get all these links, head over to the show notes on the WP-Tonic website, or subscribe to the newsletter. Do you put the recommendations in the newsletter each week? Yeah, I thought so. Okay, just want to double check. Yeah, so again, wp-tonic.com/newsletter. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks for making it an entertaining show panel. And we will see everybody next week. Bye.
Bye.